All right, will you help us out, please?
Sure. Ashtavakra vacha tena jnana phalam praptam yogabhyasa phalam tatha triptah swachendriyo nityam ekaki ramate tu yaha. Ashtavakra said, he has gained the fruit of knowledge as well as the fruit of practice of yoga, who, contented and purified in his senses, ever revels in his aloneness indeed.
Yes. So this idea of reveling in the self. I was working with a student last night, and let me share a secret with you. The mind needs to attach to something. That's its nature. That's its dharma. We talk about vairagya, supreme detachment. But there's another word for attachment. What is the definition of yoga? Yoga means union. What gets united with what? Well, the self doesn't get united with anything. The self already is Brahman. It is the mind that gets yoked to the infinite. Now, if you go onto the Google machine and you look up Hanuman embracing Lord Ram, there are several versions of that, for want of a better term, icon. And you see Hanuman with his arms around Rama, and he's just blissfully at peace. And in many of them, Ram is embracing him, and he will just be very neutral in his expression. So what's the symbolism of this classic imagery? Hanuman is the mind. Can do everything, carry mountains, fly, all that sort of stuff. Where does the mind find satisfaction? In the embrace of the infinite. This is why it's important to cultivate samadhi, the mind abiding in its source. We not only want to be full knowers of the Supreme, but have retired into the Supreme. Why? The ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will pursue whatever has given it the greatest joy. So you may intellectually know the self is Ananda, the font, the source of all bliss. But if your direct experience is drug, sex, and rock and roll of what have given you the greatest joy, there's where your mind's going to go. Thank God, God is the most beloved. So we experience the bliss of the self in two ways. In the world, we get a mediated experience of the bliss of my own self-nature through an object. When desire and object of desire become one, even in my ignorance, what I'm experiencing is the bliss of the self. The mind has ceased its vikshepa shakti for a moment. Now, in my foolishness, if I think it's the person, the place, the thing, or the situation that has inherent joy, if I've superimposed my self-nature onto the not self, the mind will get attached. So I need to watch my mind. I need to pay attention to the extroversion. We call that kama, craving, spriha, longing, sangraha, attachment. It hurts. And own your bliss. Satisfy a desire, understand, oh, that's a taste of myself. But we must also cultivate this non-mediated experience. Because that, it's clean, it's fresh, it's always new, it's always available. Wherever you go, there you are. As long as I can drop the world, my mind will come home. This is what changes our relationship with the world. Now, in the end, we also want to renounce the bliss of samadhi. Can't be attached to it. The more you try to hang on to it, it'll start to recede. But you can't renounce something you don't have. Swami Tejomayananda used to say, it's like saying, I woke up this morning and I renounced being president of the United States. That's nonsense. You aren't president, you never were going to be president. So get established in samadhi, then understand, oh, you can't be attached. But we are to revel in the self. Atmaramana. So that we get the Brahmananda rasa, the juice, essence of the bliss of myself. Then your relationship with the world is totally transformed. You see it, you walk through it like every other person. But there's no clinging, no grasping anymore. Any thoughts on this? So, practically speaking, you can come to class every week. You can go to lots of satsang. But unless you have a practice of meditation where you ultimately get rooted in the self, it's what we call paroksha jnana, indirect. All right, next verse.
Na kadachit jagat yasmin tattvagyo hantakhidyati yat ekena tenedam purnam brahmanan mandalam. Oh, the knower of truth knows no misery in this world, for the whole universe is filled by himself alone.
Yes. So, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, one of my favorite mantras. from Chandogya Upanishad. Sarvam idam, all this, kalu, verily is Brahman. It's all God. It's all bliss. It's all good. As long as I don't superimpose compulsory likes and dislikes on the phenomenal world. World isn't problematic. It's just the play of Brahman. Mysterious. But in the end, it's all God. Now, if it's all God, what's the difference between a Mahatma and an axe murderer? They're both God. The material cause of both is Brahman. Image I've been playing with and using in the past few weeks, Brahman consciousness is like a sea of water. And the names and forms are like ice in that water. They are a lower vibration and they solidify into a form. But they're nothing but the water appearing as ice. What happens to the water when the ice cube melts? Nothing. So all the names and forms, just ice cubes in Brahman. Ishvara is the ultimate ice maker machine. But what's the difference between the Mahatma and the axe murderer? It's their minds. The Mahatma, whose mind is steeped in the experience of their own self-nature, seeing the world as just Brahman alone, loves the world and the world loves them. There are stories of Ramana Maharshi. Even the wild animals would come into the satsang hall to get his darshan. There's the axe murderer. Everyone and everything is an enemy. Underneath it all is fear. Our job endeavoring to see God in everyone. Probably our greatest modern example of that is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. There she was in the slums, taking care of the poorest of the poor, the wretched of, most wretched of the wretched. They smell, they have attitude. Suffering people probably aren't very nice most of the time. Few of us are nice when we're in pain and suffering. But there she was, endeavoring, as she would phrase it, to see the face of Christ in everything. You could say to see Krishna in everyone, everything. There are no evil people. People do evil deeds. people who do evil deeds are suffering human beings. So the practice is endeavoring to have compassion for everyone. Any thoughts on this?
Jim, so then the difference between, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So the difference then between the Mahatma and the axe murderer is that they're both Brahman, but one is suffering and the other one is.
That's correct. And the reason the Mahatma is suffering is because she sees God everywhere. How do we practice this? The egoistic mind reports duality to us, and we have to see it for what it is. That's a false idea. What's there is God and God alone. What's the truth of every human being, whether they know it or not? The conscious being looking out of those eyes is God. Is that helpful?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So you have a round ice cube and you got a square ice cube. Both are ice. All that's different is the shape. What makes shapes different? The texture of the mind for humans. Next verse.
Na jatu vishaya kavkepi swaramam harshayantas yami sallavki pallava pritam. Sorry. Sallaki pallava pritam divebhana palavaha. No sense objects ever please the one who is contented in the self, just as the margosa, neem leaves, do not please an elephant who delights in sallaki leaves.
So I don't quite know the image. I suspect these are two different plants. The elephant likes one and the other one he's indifferent to. So also for the woman of realization, the man of realization. The phrase I like to use, the world becomes trinkets and baubles. The ordinary person, ooh, diamonds and rubies. But to the person of wisdom, trinkets and baubles. Pretty to look at. But there's nothing there. So the fool, where's my widget stone? The fool dances with the object. Priya, oh, it's dear to me. Moda, I'm proximate to it. Pramoda, the point of pleasure. The fool says, oh, that's a great widget. Give me more of that. Give me more of that. The wise person, though, an object comes into their experience. They may have the force of the past. Yes, I enjoy widgets. But there's no craving, no sangraha, attachment. And you can dance with the objects. And when desire and object desire become one, Krishna, Krishna. That stopped my mind. Then the object of desire becomes a meditation, not a binding. Listen carefully. Shrinahu. In the end, there's no real distinction called worldly pleasure as opposed to the bliss of the self. There's no such thing as worldly pleasure. It's all the bliss of the self. The pleasure I experience through the world is myself. Let me see if I can give a worldly example. I was talking with someone, they were involved in a relationship, and there was a breakup. And the person was missing the other. Oh, I want that person, will I be without love? And what I wanted to remind them is, no, you drew that because of your love. That's the sankalpa you're sending out. That person was simply a channel for God's love returning to you. The channel is gone. The love of God is still there. It doesn't go anywhere. And what's the truth of all the forms? They come and they go. As Krishna says in Gita, why grieve over the inevitable? Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Yastu bhogeshu bhukteshu na bhavatya devasitaha abhukteshu nirakankshi tadrisho bhavadurlabha. Rare in the world is he on whom impressions are not left of things which he had experienced, or one who does not hanker after things not yet enjoyed.
So rare is that person for whom worldly experience leaves no enduring impression which binds us with raga and dvesha. I want to repeat that action, or I'm never going to do that again. God is always encountered in the now. The past is just a collection of ideas, of memories. The future doesn't exist yet. Only now. The Jivan Mukta lives in this constant now, which happens moment by moment by moment, ever new and ever passing away. Ordinary people don't understand it. Next verse.
Bubhukshuriha.
Can you chant a little bit louder? Your voice is getting softer, dear.
Sure. Bubhukshuriha sansare mumukshurapi drishyate bhogamoksha nirakankshi viralohi mahashayaha. Those who seek worldly enjoyments and those desirous of liberation, both are found in this world. But rare indeed is the noble-minded sage who is not desirous of either enjoyment or liberation.
So frequently you will hear people say, it's not trying to find God, it's only the journey. No, that's not true. There are people who seek worldly enjoyment. There are those who seek the divine. But there are those who have come into the direct experience in the space between your thoughts, with the attention introverted. Who are you? Do you see there's nothing there? Yet that no thingness shines as pure awareness. It's empty and it's vast and it's you. That's yourself. Rest of it. This is why for intermediate and advanced students, I like to say, don't try to be an enlightened person. If you are a mumukshu, one who's a seeker after liberation, if your mind interprets that is, I want to be a liberated person, that is like the person who's getting ready to commit suicide and says, oh, I can't wait to see Aunt Mary's face at my funeral. She's gonna know it's all her fault. I can't wait to see it. There she'll be in the front row and I'll just be glaring at her. That's nonsense. You won't be at your own funeral. Likewise, two kinds of people in the world: those who think they're a person, boast, think I'm a person, I'm my body, I'm a seeker after joy and happiness and accomplishment. A few are mumukshus. No, I'm a seeker after liberation. I want the spiritual life. Then there are those rare ones who know I'm not a person. I'm just the grounded being. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Atma Brahma. I'm not worried about this world. I'm not worried about this silly mind. I'm not a person. And I never was. That was my delusion. I thought I was a person. I thought I was the body. For that one, the person running around with ego identification is like someone carrying a large clay pot. Why are you carrying that large clay pot? Oh, because I'm a pot. No, you're not a pot. You're carrying the damn thing. Oh, no, I'm a pot. I'm a pot. That makes no sense. Yet that's how most people in the world, they know the body is an object of awareness. They see it. They know it. They've watched it change, and then they think they're the body. They refute their direct experience. Such is the power of Maya, of ignorance. And when you realize your own self, that you are not the body, you realize the self in everybody else. And you know nobody dies. Now, you can't talk like that in the world out there. It's not useful. It only agitates people's minds. But you know, just ice cubes melting. Water hadn't gone anywhere. Next verse.
Dharmartha kama moksheshu jivite marane tatha kasyapyutara chittasya heyopadeyata nahi. Rare is the broad-minded person who has neither attraction for nor aversion to piety, worldly prosperity, desire fulfillment, and liberation, as well as any attraction for life or aversion to death.
So, the person of steady wisdom neither avoids the world nor is compelled to engage in it. How do they act? Prarabdha karma, simply the force of the past maturing and the desires of other people. They're perfectly willing to die. They're perfectly willing to be in the body for the rest of eternity. It makes no difference. There are no longer injunctions for religious practice. Yet they may be seen to act appropriately under the current circumstances. Grandma dies, you go to the funeral, if you're led to, even though you know grandma never died. When I was in Jaipur in 2015, and I was hanging out at Bhuvaneshwarananda's ashram, great Mahatma. Every evening they do arati. He didn't participate. He'd sit there and read his paper. I participated out of respect for the community. I was a guest. Didn't have to. Got nothing for it. But it's what's appropriate, to be gracious. So the person of steady wisdom intuitively and spontaneously acts. It's what the Tibetans call crazy wisdom, in the way that's appropriate for circumstances. Not out of some plan or recipe, but out of an intuitive response. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Vanchana Vishwavilaye Na Dveshastasya Cha Stito Yatha Jivikaya Tasmad Thanya Aste Yatha Sukham. The man of wisdom does not feel any longing for the dissolution of the universe or any aversion towards its existence. He, the Blessed One, therefore, lives happily in whatever subsistence turns up, as is his lot, unasked.
So, some of us can come to a place in life where we've let go of the vast majority of our attachments, but we hold on to some aversions. And one reaches a state of nihilism. Oh, I can't stand this terrible world, all the violence, all the crime, all the corruption. Oh, I can't wait to realize myself and not have to come back anymore. That's another form of delusion. So the practice that's implied, live today as if you're going to die tomorrow. Do you have a fractured relationship that you need to clean up? To admit you're wrong, to forgive someone? Live with death on your shoulder. This is not a rehearsal. This is your life. But then live as if you're going to be in the body forever on the other shoulder. You probably should pay the mortgage or the rent. What if it's going to be just like this for the rest of eternity? How will you live? The answer's the same. Let go. This is why I think the Buddhists have the Bodhisattva vow. Oh, I want to enter nirvana and escape from this terrible world. And you take the Bodhisattva vow. I vow not to enter nirvana until all sentient beings are enlightened and the number of sentient beings is infinite. Meaning, you're here. Now, how are you going to live here in this very body as if you're going to be here forever? Very, very good practice. Of course, the person of wisdom then says, very interesting. I don't see any other sentient beings, do you? There's only one of us here. Next verse.
kritartho nena jnanena etya evam galitadhi kriti Pashyan Shrinvan Sprishan Jidkran Ashnan Aste Yatha Sukham. Being fulfilled by this wisdom of the self, and with his mind absorbed and contented in the self, the wise man lives happily, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, and eating.
So the person of wisdom functions in the world on the outside, looking like every other person. But inside, Shitala, cool. Yoga Vasishtha uses this wonderful image. The ignorant person is like someone standing on the bank of the river in the hot sun, roasted from head to foot. The person of wisdom is like the person who goes out into the river and the water is up to your chest. And yeah, your head and maybe your shoulders and arms are hot, but from the chest down, cool. So also for the woman or man of wisdom, the outer part of the mind does its vyavahara, its transactions with the world. Inside, shunyata, empty. Nothing on the outside touches that deep emptiness. Next verse.
Shunya Drishti Vritha Cheshta Vikalana Ninidrayani Cha Naspriha Na Viriktva Naspriha Na Virakritva Kshina Sansara Sagare. There is no attachment or aversion for one in whom the ocean of the world has dried up. His gaze becomes vacant, his bodily actions are purposeless, and his senses inoperative.
Yes. So it's metaphor. It doesn't mean he looks like a zombie. But something inside has dried up. Shankara uses a beautiful image. There are moths that look like dried dead leaves. And when they fly about, they look like a leaf being blown in the wind. And then there are dead leaves who are picked up by the wind and blown about by the wind. So you've got the moth and the dead leaf. They look very similar. But the moth is like the egoistic person, still being driven by desires and aversions, various drives of ego. But the Jivan Mukta is like the dead leaf. looking like a fluttering moth. But inside, something is gone. Meaning all the drives of ego. There's nothing to accomplish, nothing to do, nowhere to go. Yet, the force of the past and the desires of other people make that piece of equipment move in the world. Until the prarabdha karma's gone. Then what happens? You die. But it's causeless for them. Any thoughts on this? Let me see if I can give a worldly example. I was talking with a dear friend who last year got his EDD, his doctorate in education from USF. And I can remember, oh gosh, over a decade ago, when he was a student at City College of San Francisco, and he had this goal. I want to be a professor at City College. Well, after he got his master's degree, he was on the regular adjunct faculty there for years, Now he's still teaching there, teaches speech. It's very different. How many years, how many hundreds of classes has he done? There's a piece of him that's kind of over it. I mean, he still enjoys the classroom and working with students. But that drive that he had, oh, I want to be a professor at City College, teaching speech, is gone. So for the Jivan Mukta, the whole world is like that. It's all gone. He gets up and he goes because it's his duty. It's his job. So also the Jivan Mukta continues to act in life, but without the same raga and dvesha as the ordinary person. Next verse.
Na jagarti na nidrati non milati na milati aho paradasha kwapi vartate mukta chetasaha. The man of wisdom neither keeps awake nor sleeps. He neither opens nor closes his eyes. Oh, the liberated soul anywhere enjoys the supreme state of consciousness.
So these are the kinds of verses that make people kind of goofy. Oh, Swamiji never goes to sleep. Oh, Swamiji, he's never aware of the phenomenal world. All sorts of nonsense. Doesn't mean that. What it means is the Jivan Mukta is identified with the self. Gita spends quite a bit of time talking about what is actionless in the midst of action and what is action in the midst of actionlessness. So the self in me is always actionless. It does not come, it does not go, it does not rise, it does not fall, it does not wake up, it does not go to sleep. It's always just there. And the equipment, the android, the body, mind, intellect, is always acting. Sitting still is an action. So we need to be clear. What is action and what is actionless? It is the equipment that is acting. But I never do in me. You may have heard me share this before. I was at a camp. One of the delegates asked Swamiji when he was going to come to Allahabad. And he says, I go nowhere. Allahabad passes in front of me. Now that's true of all of us, not just the Jivan Mukta. But the Jivan Mukta knows it. And again, there's a practice implied. See if you change under any circumstances. If you go here, is yourself any different? No. If you go there, is yourself any different? No. You're working very hard, does yourself change? No. You're hanging out watching Netflix, does yourself change? No. You're upset and agitated, does yourself change? No. If you're deep in meditation, does yourself change? No. Kutusta, Krishna says in Gita. Kuta is either an anvil or a mountain. I like for this purpose to use anvil. Anvil is sthita, it's established. And the iron, if you want to make a horseshoe, or you want to make a sword, or you want to make a scythe, those are the things that move on it. Anvil is sthita. It stands still. So also, this world is constantly changing. Jugga, 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 jugga. And I am Kutusta, still, say like a mountain, like an ant. Next verse. Are we at the end of the chapter?
No. I was just making sure I was in the right verse. Sarvatra drishyate swastha, sarvatra vimalashayah, samasta vasana mukto, muktaha sarvatra rajate. The liberated one is found everywhere, abiding in the self, and is undefiled by desires under all conditions. Freed from all vasanas, he revels.
So, the vasanas get roasted. So if you go buy some mung beans and they're fresh, you can put them in a jar with some water and a paper towel and they'll sprout. You can grow your own mung bean sprouts. But if you take the same mung beans, put them in the frying pan, you heat them up, they look the same, but you can't sprout them, they're roasted. So also, we may look at the Jivan Mukta, and they may seem to have desires, preferences, but it's not like you and me. How? A vasana is what impels desires for the ordinary person. A vasana has two powers: vritti, veiling power, or avarana shakti, veiling power, and vikshepa shakti, projecting power. The first and most important power of a vasana is that it robs us of self-experience. I go to sleep to my essential nature. I do not know, I forget, I do not realize I'm witnessing consciousness. Then vikshepa shakti. I think I'm my body, I think I'm a person, I think the world is real. We got serious business going on. Two powers, Varana Shakti, Vikshepa Shakti. For the Jivan Mukta, that Avarana Shakti is gone. Without effort, without practice, for all circumstances, they never forget, oh, I am that grounded being, I'm that witnessing consciousness. Ramana Maharshi would say, just as for the ordinary person, you never forget that you have a human body. You don't wake up in the morning thinking you're a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig. Without effort, you know you have a human body. So also for the Jivan Mukta. All the time, without effort, without practice, the most obvious fact of their existence is that they are Brahman. And that changes. You and I, we need to keep remembering it. We need to keep practicing. This practice of knowledge is called jnana abhyasa, the practice of knowledge. Shankara has a wonderful metaphor. He says it's like the kataka nut put into the water jars. So the metaphor he's using is in India, in old-timey days, when the monsoon would come, it would wash silt out of the mountains and stuff. So in the tanks, in the rivers, in the lakes, there would be silt suspended in the water. It would be unpotable. So what would they do? They would take the katakana, they would, in a mortar and pestle, they would make powder, put that in, does a surface tension thing. Tracks the silt, then it goes to the bottom, decanted. So jnana abhyasa is like the kataka nut powder. Our modern day example is Tide Pods. I have dirty clothes. I need to clean my clothes. So what do? First thing I do in the washing machine is add more dirt, but a special dirt, a dirt called Tide Pods. Put those in, wash the clothes. On the rinse cycle, both the detergent and the dirt get washed away. So the jnana abhyasa is tide, or better yet, cheer for the mind. That's another detergent in America, cheer. Got a dirty mind and it needs to be brainwashed. What's left? You discard even the practice. Vishuddha, extremely pure. Any thoughts on this? All right, how many more verses in this chapter?
Several, like 8 or 9.
Okay, we probably won't finish it, but we'll keep going. Going on.
Pashyan Shivan Sprishan Jigran Ashnan Krihan Vadan Prajan Vihitani Hite Mukta Mukta Eva Mahashayaha. Seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, accepting, speaking, and walking, the noble-minded one, free from all attachments and aversions, is indeed liberated.
Yes. So the highest state is not nirvikalpa samadhi. The scriptures talk about nirvikalpa. Achieve nirvikalpa, that state where knower, knowing, and known are merged. It is of great value for most of us. The intellect, the subtle intellect, will not let go of subtle attachments to self until you have at least once an experience of the disappearance of your mind. And when the mind returns, it goes, oh, there's nobody there. But the highest state we call sahaja samadhi, natural or continuous samadhi, which means, as Shankara says in Nirvana Shattakam, aham nirvikalpa. I am nirvikalpa. Meaning in me, I am the knower, I am the means of knowledge, I am the thing known, me. And that's a continuous experience, actually, for all of us. It's mind, perception of the world, rises like pratibimba, like images in the mirror. So the Jivan Mukta, she is seen to walk in the world, eat, dance, work, ever watching the equipment do those things. But her identity is with the sun. I have friends who approach their lives with kind of like a business plan for life. 5 years, I want to be this goal, and 10 years, I want to meet this goal. And when I find a partner, I want them to have this quality. And, it's all that my safety, my security, my happiness will be dependent on meeting these goals, acquiring all this. I tell people, I'm the ball bearing in God's pinball machine. At birth, the pinball bearing would whack. Then what does the Lord do with the paddles? Whack, 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 bounce, 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 bounce. Have no idea what's going to happen from moment to moment. And it doesn't matter. At some point, the ball bearing, game over. This piece of equipment just bounces experience to experience. And nothing changes. Sarvamaya, Sarvamaya. All is Maya. All is bliss. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is verily Brahman. It's all God. It's all going to work. God's in charge. Okay, perfect place to stop. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thank you.